You're like very chilled. There's like, no, genuinely, like there's been a level there. You've had some sort of a level up. It's just really cool.
I can't take these compliments, mate.
My daddy issues are already pouring out. The episode hasn't even started. On that topic, my opener for this one, Ciaran, really simply is, I wanted to ask you, this is just a thing that was in my head the last few days whenever I knew we were going to have this conversation. What do you think our fathers have given us in terms of the previous generation of Northern Irish men? Like, what gifts have they given us? What blessings have they given us? And what, in a way, baggage have they left us to unpack?
Straight in with the deep question. It's a great question. I think they have given us resilience, work ethic, humbleness, character, humour, a lot of great things that make, I suppose, us different from the rest of the world. You know, we do have that work ethic. We've got that humbleness. We can go anywhere and we get on with people. We graft. Probably as a result of that, having to be resilient, you know, that no choice but to be resilient, potentially. And I think it could be argued that the baggage is emotional disconnection as men. And I'm basing that on the fact that, you know, those conversations of boys don't cry, man up, grow a set are factual. They're commonplace. So it's like in everything, there's the two sides of the coin. It's hard to measure, you know, however, there are statistics to show that the suicide pandemic amongst men in Northern Ireland is shocking, as is the rates of addiction, the males that are incarcerated in prison, just really struggling with mental health. And I think that is a result of perhaps that emotional disconnection of talking about your stress or about your emotions as a weakness, you know, or seeing any form of vulnerability as a weakness. I think that's the emotional baggage that's left behind. And I think we're in a season of trying to heal from that.
Yeah.
And trying to grow from that and trying to dispel some of the myths around that in terms of there's a massive amount of strength in vulnerability. I think vulnerability is an important part of authenticity, you know, to embrace the fact that we are vulnerable, we're human, and we don't need to be super strong all the time. We don't need to carry the shield and the sword all the time. In fact, it's very healthy to put it down. And I think as you become a father yourself, you start to realize that, you know, you can't always have your shield up when you're playing with your son.
Right.
You can't always have your sword drawn when you're playing with your son. It has to come down at times. And I think as we are evolving as men in this part of the world, I think we're more rounded, we're more grounded, and potentially becoming better fathers. That being said, you only know what you know. And our fathers and their fathers grew up in a significantly different time. You know, you have the Troubles.
Or you can't put the shield down.
Exactly.
Put the shield down, you're going to get wrecked.
Yeah.
Either by terrorism or by economic uncertainty.
Yeah.
You know, there's an argument to be made that, you know, what were their fathers going through? First World War, Second World War. Yeah. It's like there's a lot of shields and swords being held there.
And so I think it's superficial to blame fathers or grandfathers on being emotionally disconnected. It's all they knew. You know, they were in a state of survival. Mm-hmm. I think thankfully we are progressing, and it's now to go out of that state of survival and into thriving and into kind of being grounded and balanced. And arguably we wouldn't be here as men if it wasn't for our fathers, you know?
Yeah, well, there's a whole argument to be made. Think about what the role of a man is, what the role of the grandfather, what the role of the father was. You know, it's to protect and to provide is kind of the low-hanging fruit there. And the fact that you and I are sitting here having this conversation in this city that is experiencing a tremendous moment of peace and prosperity, albeit still in the early days.
Yeah.
But they've done something right. And that's why I felt very led to, like, it's not just the baggage, but it's like, what's the blessing as well? Because you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because if you do, it's like unbelievably disrespectful. Of course.
We are approaching the topic with the work ethic that they give us. You know, we're not pussyfooting into the topic of masculinity and male mental health and emotional stability. Like, we are approaching that with the resilience and the work ethic and the humbleness and the openness of our fathers. So it is the two sides of the coin. You need both sides of the coin. And even as we venture forward, our sons' generations, we still need that resilience. We still need that work ethic. We still need to be able to overcome challenges and obstacles. And, it can't all be... At times, life requires you to put up the shield. We can't become too vulnerable all the time.
Yeah.
There needs to be a foot in both camps. So
I feel like there's been a negative pendulum swing the opposite direction, where it's like, no swords allowed. If you have a sword, put the sword down. Men aren't allowed to carry swords anymore. And then what do you have? You have, if you want to use archaic language, you have a village that has absolutely no protection. You need like Psalm 23, like the classic Sunday school psalm, where it's like, the Lord is my shepherd, I have everything that I need, he makes me lie down in green pastures. But there's a wee verse in there that says something like, your rod and your staff comfort me. And so the rod is like the discipline, but the staff is the comfort. And if you get rid of one, if it's all rod, which maybe we could say previous generations of Northern Irish men, it was all rod, it was very, very harsh, and very little staff. But actually, I think a very powerful picture of masculinity is actually someone who can hold both of those things.
Absolutely.
It's the warrior poet. It's the person who has the sword and the shield, but can also take the armour off and cry with his kids and write poetry and all this kind of powerful stuff.
I totally agree. I think it was Plato said about the man is the scholar athlete. It's the scholar who can read the language of the world and is into music and community and family and plays with his kids, but it's also the man that puts himself through challenges to sculpt the body, to sculpt the mind, to sharpen the character and the soul, and it's merging the two. And I think, it's a subject I've really delved into the last few years in terms of masculinity, and what we class as masculine is the doing, the protecting, the providing, the working, the slaying the dragons for our children and our wives so they don't have to. But there's also the feminine traits within us, the creativity, the intuition, the communication, the dancing, the loving, the writing, the poetry. There has to be both. There has to be both. I think you're right in saying it. Then arguably our father's generation didn't have an opportunity potentially to, I suppose...
If you're in a time of war, you're not taking your armour off.
Exactly.
You're stupid. That's actually foolish.
Exactly. And it comes down to balance. It comes down to balance. I think you're right. I think there is a narrative that men have potentially are either stuck in that masculine side of, I can't show any emotion, or have went into too far into that. It's all, I'm offended by everything. And for me, this is the importance of self-reflection and self-analysis, is to make sure that you are balanced and grounded. And there's times where you have to put the shield up, and there's also times where you have to settle down. It's always back to self.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely, because that's something else. Matt, you said something earlier on about discipline as well. And I think that's something personally that's really important as well. Like, for example, people who haven't grown up with a good father figure and all that, having that discipline to be better than their father that they had, or even having discipline over their emotions, when to show it, when not to. I think that's a really key factor in how you should be interacting in life. And I think it was a good point you made there.
So how have you in your own life started to bridge that gap between having the armour on and taking the armour off? Let me ask you this, Ciaran May. Welcome to the show, by the way.
Thank you.
When did you start to take the armour off?
Very recently.
Awesome.
Probably within the last 3 to 4 years.
Nice.
That I could overtly take it off in public and be comfortable with my own vulnerability, because it's frightening. It's terrifying taking your shield off for the first time. Absolutely terrifying. However, it's a pivotal moment for me, to be able to show that. I had unconsciously built up an armour, big guy, did weightlifting at the muscles, I'm covered head to toe in tattoos. And there's also, it was a protective element. Don't hurt me, stay back. But taking that off was an important element, and finding myself and loving, come back to self-love and self-acceptance. that journey inwards, you have to put the shield down first and foremost to penetrate inside, you know. So very, very recently, this is a new journey for me. I'm by no means an expert, but I'm very enthusiastic in terms of my own self-awareness, my own self-acceptance, my own self-love. But yeah, it's been probably the past 3 to 4 years.
Very interesting. Even just like, I'm obsessed with that picture. Like, I'm thinking about, like, you know, all these kind of like great masculine movies like Gladiator and all this sort of stuff. It's like the definition of intimacy, like you can't have like an intimate skin on skin experience with somebody when you have armor on.
Yeah.
You know, and that's hugging your 3-year-old daughter. It's being close to your 7-year-old son. It's spending intimate time with your wife. Like, the armor needs to come off for that.
Yeah, Matt, I was probably good at that. I mean, my safe space is my home. That's my cave. You know, that's my wife, my 2 children. That is my everything. However, when I left that cave, the armor was on.
Interesting.
24/7. And so it's, I suppose, that journey of putting the armor down in public, so to speak, that's what's new. That's what's different to me. But I mean, I've probably always, you know, I'm big into intimacy. You know, I'm a softie at heart. Like, I really, really am.
People don't let the tats fool you.
No, honestly, I truly am. I've always, there's always that little boy within us, you know, that just wants love and wants to give love and to receive love. That's in us all. That is in us all. I've always been connected to nature. I've always loved intimacy. I've always been a hands-on parent. I've always been an open and loyal husband. You know, it is the public persona that I struggled with, because I associated vulnerability with weakness, and I associated weakness with being preyed upon, somebody hurting you kind of physically, mentally, or emotionally. So the armor in public was a defense mechanism.
Right.
And it was probably through emotional immaturity that I assumed that I had to carry it with me at all times. But taking it off was like, I can breathe for the first time. You know, I can be myself. I remember, you know, all these things coincide. I'm only new to LinkedIn, probably about 3 years, and it was a friend says, you need to go on it for a business point of view. And I felt as if I opened the door, and in the room I just saw, you know, business suits, ties, shirts, business dresses, and there's me, barefoot, covered head to toe in tattoos, thinking, oh, I'm not going to fit in here. You know, right. This is how I used to think. And I remember just like keeping the door open and walking in thinking, you know, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be my authentic self. I'm going to show the softness. I'm going to show the kindness. I'm going to show the big heart. And I'll just be myself. And if people are attracted to that, happy days. If not, I just keep in my own lane and keep doing my own thing. And it's been a great experience, a very positive experience.
Where does you say it kind of comes naturally to you with your family, with your kids, with your wife, you're a softie at heart, connected to nature. Like, if you look back even to like your origin story, like, because for a lot of people that doesn't come naturally. Where does that come from for you? Was it an influence of somebody? Was it the experience you had earlier on? I
think you could go down many different routes. I had a very healthy male role model that was always there. My grandfather on my mum's side, you know, epitome of a gentleman, very loving, very family orientated. As I went through those tough teenage years, not that I didn't push my way by any stretch of the imagination, but there's an element of it being uncool to spend time with your grandfather when you're running about with other teenagers. So I probably didn't allow him to have the influence that he could have had on me. My mother was very kind. You know, I've been blessed to have good friends, good, I suppose, family members around me. It's always there in everyone. You know what? I think it does come back to that inner child. I suppressed that massively. You know, I grew up in a house in a estate in West Belfast where it was, you had to be tough. You know, if you weren't tough, you struggled. You know, you massively struggled. And that goes from everything from bullying to fights to, you know, drink, drugs, and I was balls deep in all of that, you know, and I was massively disconnected from my emotions, from living a life of authenticity. And this is why it's so important to me now. I kind of repel vulnerability. I repelled authenticity. I approached every day with a mask on of trying to be tough to fit into my perception of what a housing estate was. So it comes naturally, I think, because I repressed it for most of my life. And I think that's why I struggled throughout the years with, my own bouts of anxiety and depression and stress. I put it down to not being authentic, outwardly and inwardly.
Yeah.
And so there came a point where I was like, I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
I'm being me. I'm loving me. I'm accepting me. I'm not living a lie anymore for me or for other people. And it was just a commitment to myself.
What was that moment?
I very, very nearly took my own life. Very nearly took my own life. I had been struggling with stress, with not being authentic. I was the funny guy, the helper, the protector, the provider, the big strong man. But inside, I think that little boy was just yearning for
someone please take care of me.
Exactly. Yeah. I felt as if I was going through life without a map. Felt lost. And there was one Friday, and I think my mum and wife were worried, but also, I was stressed. I was ready to explode. And I came home from work one Friday, and I said to my wife, I need to go. I need to go again. She was like, okay, you sure you're okay? I was like, yeah. I drove from Lisburn to Gleno Waterfall, which is just outside Carrickfergus. And I got up, parked the car, and I started lashing, and I just bust out crying. Just sobbing uncontrollably. And I get into the water at the waterfall, and all that, I suppose, stress and pain that I was feeling went away. And I remember thinking, oh, thank God. It felt almost as if I was locked in a room and on fire. And I didn't know how to put the fire out. And I got out of the water and got back into the car, and that feeling came back. And it was just in that moment, I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is too hard. That was my thoughts. This is too hard. It was almost as if I can't carry this cross anymore.
Yeah.
That's how it felt. And I drove from Gleno to Carrickfergus Harbour. And at the time, I drove an automatic car. I put my seatbelt on, locked the windows, and went to send the most cowardly message of my life to my wife. To basically, my thing was, under no circumstances can her or my kids think they could have done anything more different, because they couldn't. This was how I was internalizing things. And I went to send that message, and I'm not great with tech. I've never been one to, have screensavers or anything, but I took out my phone that day and flicked it open. And as opposed to the usual screen, the generic colourful screen, a picture was there. And the picture didn't even have prominence, so to speak. It was a badly taken, low quality picture from about 3 or 4 years previous of my wife and 2 kids in a cottage on the Mourne Mountains. We try to do something every New Year's Eve. And it was just their 3 faces. I panicked. I just seen their 3 faces. I went, I can't do it. Can't do it in them. And I put the car in reverse and sped away, in a panic, and drove home. And I was like, the fact that I was close to hitting that exit button terrified me. It terrified me. I realized I was emotionally drained. I was exhausted. I was just exhausted. I just felt, I had got up from the canvas so many times in life, and I felt as if I didn't have the energy to stand up one more time.
Yeah, man.
And that was the moment where I was like, I just need to lie down for a while. I need to stay down. I have to stop getting up and facing things. I have to stop, learning. I need to stay down and rest and recover here. And that's what I done. I took time out. I changed career.
Were you in the police at this point?
I was, yeah. And even that in itself, coming from West Belfast, like dealing with that, a decade of that. And this is the thing, like for 10 years, I'm 30s now. This was in my 30s, but for a third of my life, I started each day looking under my car for a bomb.
Right.
You know, that's straight into a vibration of fear. You know, look at me now. I start each day swimming in the sea at Helen's Bay, happy as a pig in shit, free as a bird. But at that time, like, I was just stuck in that algorithm.
Yeah.
You know, and did not know. I was always great at the resilience piece. I could always deal with pressure, but at that stage in my life, I didn't really have a release valve for the pressure, and that's what it felt like. I felt like I was going to explode with this stress that I was carrying.
Yeah.
And that was the day I was like, things are going to change.
Why'd you join the police?
Money. We were poor. Like, we grew up. Everything's relevant. I don't like saying we were poor because there are people in like extreme poverty. We had a roof over our head. We had food on the table. But I mean, my mother worked 2 jobs, a day shift and a night shift, to make ends meet. There was 4 kids. I mean, we never were on a foreign holiday. We were poor in a sense. And my mother and father's marriage broke down when I was about 15. I was the oldest of 4. I left school and around my GCSEs to become man of the house, kind of give up my education. I went to a grammar school. Although I was becoming troublesome in school because of what was going on at home, I was always intelligent. And I'd kind of give up my education to go and work on building sites. You know, I was a labourer. And I struggled with the fact, you know, I felt as if there was no transition from me becoming a boy to a man. It was like literally one day I was in school and the next day I was on building sites with big, burly, hard men.
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking, oh my God, I need to man up here. And I did. I did. And I'll never, I mean, I've no regrets. I'll never forget my first full week on a building site. I had literally worked myself quite literally to the bone, you know, hands were bleeding. And I got £125 for a full week's work. And I stopped in the off license and bought my mum a bottle of white wine, the way my dad used to sometimes. And I've never felt pride like that in my life.
Wow.
A bottle of wine called McGuigan's Chardonnay. And being able to hand her that, you know, dirty clothes, exhausted, but it was just, it was a great moment for me. But
and also like a sad moment.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to play the role
I think
that wasn't yours to play.
I think my ego loved it.
Oh man, you feel amazing.
Yeah, my ego loved it because my mates were still in school. I was walking past my mates in their school uniform.
Yeah.
And
you're like a dragon slayer. You're like walking down. You may as well be carrying the head of a dragon behind you.
Yeah. Building site gear, you know?
Yeah.
Steel toe cap boots, dirty jeans.
Sure.
Moustache. You know, I was like, what are you doing still in school? Little did I know.
Yeah.
You know, little did I know. But I remember as kind of the years progressed, late teens, early 20s, my friends were now in university having the time of their lives, traveling the world. And there I was on building sites thinking, what happens next? Like, do I stay here? Is this it forever? You know, no job security. We get rained off a lot in this country on building sites. So I went from one version of poverty to a second version of poverty. And I was working on a building site in Derry one day, reading a newspaper as you do, and seeing a job advertisement that was like, not in an office, tick, you know, room for promotion, well paid, putting you through all these courses. Like, what is it? PSNI. And I thought, no chance.
Wow.
It ticks all my boxes, but that label, it's too dangerous. In West Belfast, it's too dangerous. And then I remember getting really angry, going, I am not allowing society anymore to tell me what to do, what to feel, how to act. And so I remember thinking to myself, I have two decisions. I can emigrate to Canada, where my mum was born. But at this stage, thank God, I'd met my wife and she's very much a home bird. She was like, I'm not moving. And the other one was, I'll apply for this, and if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Sail through the initial test, sail through the role plays. And I was on a building site in Derry and I got a phone call to say, you've been accepted. And my heart sank. I was like, oh no, now I have to follow this through.
Right.
And it was just a baptism of fire, you know, young boy/man, 22-ish. And back then it was different. You know, this was 2008, still quite militaristic. That first night, you're bulling boots, as they like polishing boots, and there was like this drill sergeant walking up and down, shouting out orders. I remember looking out the window across the Belfast hills thinking, how have I got here? Like literally last summer I was in Ibiza. How have I got here?
Yeah.
And it was the best and worst thing I've ever done. You know, again, two sides of the coin. Taught me so much. Like, I look back at all the challenges in life with an immense sense of gratitude, because there were the necessary chapters to be on this one. But again, that in terms of my own emotional journey, I mean, you know, you were maybe cutting somebody down from a rope at 2:00, and then at 5:00 you were sitting down having your dinner with your wife and kids, and they were like, how's work? Fine.
Right.
You know, you're not going to talk about stuff like that. Throw death threats into the mix because of where I was from. Yeah, it was challenging, but also an immense kind of personal growth and learning journey. It allowed me to, you know, become financially stable, to get my first home, to bring kids into the world, to I suppose learn how to communicate with people from different I suppose childhoods and myself, different cultures, to see the best and the worst of society. It gave me a real enthusiasm for life, but it came to the stage where I think it was 2018, I was diagnosed with PTSD by a psychologist in work in and around that time, and I just realised I'm not going to heal in the same environment that I'm in. And so in and around the same time, I was powerlifting with Northern Ireland. It was an outlet for me. To lift heavy stuff it was just an outlet. And for a while it had been alcohol, but I'd realised it needs to be something healthier, so it ended up being weights. And I realised that it was a bit like your man from Shawshank Redemption, because when you're stuck in a job like that, you have 35 years to do, and you get a pension at the end of it. And when you're in there for 10 years, you don't see a way out. It's then you're thinking, who's going to employ a peeler from West Belfast with no education, you know? So
you're locked in.
I was locked in.
There becomes a point where you feel like, and I want to very explicitly say this is a feeling, it's not reality, but you feel like there's no other alternative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember desperation is a great thing. You know, I remember speaking to a guy and he said, I met God, G-O-D, the gift of desperation.
Wow.
And I was desperate. I was desperate not to do the 35 years, to be, you know, to be divorced, to have no relationship with my kids, to be drinking too much for a pension. And so I was desperate by any means necessary. I was going to change. And I went back to tech and studied to be a sports therapist, started doing sports massage, acupuncture, got big into how the body holds stress, got big into kind of neuro-linguistic programming, and essentially, I suppose there's, you know, cheated the system. I started looking at marketing. How do I make myself stand out on social media when it comes to kind of sports massage and that? Started working with a lot of famous boxers and celebrities, and I remember at one point meeting all these incredible people and thinking, I have locked myself away from the world for a decade. I had no social media. I had this terrifying fear of being out and out and somebody saying, are you in the police now? So I'd locked myself away, and now these people were coming to me and they see me as Ciaran, the sports massage guy. And I was like, this is good. I'm loving these interactions. I'm loving hearing people's stories. I'm loving connecting with these people. I'm loving being of service, of being impactful. And I got such a thirst for it that I decided to take another big, fearful step and hand in my resignation. And that was probably more scary than joining, because by that stage I had a mortgage, I had 2 children that require me to provide. And I was giving all that up for a punt at business. But, you know, the cliche of burning the ships. Yeah. I went all in. I remember sitting my wife down and saying to her, like, if I have to fight tooth and nail, if I have to work 24 hours, I will do this. This will work. And arguably the best thing I done was to burn the ships.
Right.
Because it gave me that attitude of things that I've done that I've been terrified about, standing on stage speaking, going into certain companies, taking on certain opportunities, sweating profusely, nervous, the inner anxiety. It was like, yes, I will do that.
The gift of desperation.
The gift of desperation has been my greatest ally. I still have that. I still have the attitude of I'm in a corner and I will fight my way to freedom.
Yeah. Why'd you go to Gleno?
Water, cold water.
On the day you're worth I'm going to call it on the attempt of your suicide. Yeah.
I don't know. Cold water makes me feel really present, really good. At one point, I think it was the 21st of December, about 5 years ago, I got into the sea as an adult. And at great parts of my childhood around the countryside, swimming in rivers, jumping off waterfalls. It's a really happy childhood memory. But going in as an adult was a completely different experience. I went in strictly for physical benefits. At that time, I was lifting heavy weights. It was taxing on my body. And I remember going into the sea for that first time and experiencing silence of the mind that was alien to me. It was alien. It was so, like, such a aha moment because I'd never experienced it probably since I was a child. And, just even feeling my breath in the body, like, oh my God, what is this? I remember thinking, what is this? What is this silence? Is this meditation? Is it a spiritual moment? Something has happened to me. And I remember, I'd done it every day for a year off the back of that. And I just knew it made me happy. It made me present. It worked. And so that day, as opposed to reaching for a bottle of wine or a bottle of beer, whatever, I was like, I'm going to the sea. I'm going to the cold water. And it just happened to be Gleno.
It's really interesting. Like, I've said this nearly every episode. Daniel will just laugh at me. There's a wee quote here underneath the bookcase. So it's a wee sneaky one. And it says, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. It's actually a Joseph Campbell quote.
Love it.
Who I know you and I are a big fan of. And so many of the things you've shared today have reminded me of that quote.
Yeah.
The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. Yeah. The cave of quitting the steady job, giving up the pension. The cave of getting into the cold water as an adult. Yeah. It's like all the upside you've experienced has been on the other side of going into a cave you didn't really want to go into. Absolutely.
For me, that is resilience. It is the acceptance of the peaks and valleys of life. It is the acceptance of going into the cave and facing whatever it is you need to face, but coming back out again a stronger person, a more experienced person, a more fuller person, a better father, a more loving husband, a better human being. I think the evolution of us as individuals and humanity as a society requires regular visits to the cave.
Very awesome.
That's the sword, isn't it, as well, we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, and a question for you then, Ciaran, is how can someone take that stride to self-love, self-appreciation, and such a self-betterment in total? How do you think someone can go about doing such a thing?
Because that's a cave in and of itself.
Yeah.
It's easy to, I'm going to go in here and slay a big dragon, but it's like, what if I go into the cave and like nurture that inner boy that has not been talked to for 20 years?
It's probably met with the same alien experience as the cold water for the first time, but I think all self-development stems back to self-love. Like everything comes back to love. Everything comes back to love. Like the reason you're doing the podcast, the reason I'm running Natural Resilience, it all comes back to love and passion and purpose. And I suppose, I think it's really important to step off the hamster wheel every so often. I think solitude's a great thing. I think that self-reflection as a man is very, very important, journaling, going into nature. And for anyone that's thinking, oh, well, how would I do that? Go to a forest, turn your phone in flight mode, bring a journal, a pen, just be present. Like, just be present. And that, you know, people say, oh, you face your demons, but you also face the soul, the spirit, the essence that is busting at the seams to get out as well. And I think we have become so busy that we ignore those little gentle whispers that are happening. And you have to, for me anyway, I have to almost detach from the noise. I have to step off the hamster wheel. I have to go somewhere quiet to retune, you know, myself so that I can listen to those little whispers. I think, right, okay. And it's something I do quite regularly. I will go to a forest. There's a forest quite close to me. I light a fire, bring a hammock, I bring a journal, a pen. I tell my wife, you know, I'll be back in a few hours, keep my phone on airplane mode and just be. And I have literally got all my ideas, my creativity, my, you know, self-reflection all happens in those little quiet moments.
Yeah. I know, like a really simple hack, for lack of a better term, is just put pen on paper and don't even think about what you're going to write about.
Yeah.
Just write.
Yeah.
And like I've started like loads and loads of sessions like that where it's like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to write. What am I even doing here? This is a load of nonsense. Why? And next thing you know, it's like whoosh. Yeah. It all just comes out.
Yeah. And I think, you know, removing the bias.
Yeah.
I have to write this. I must do this.
Like you're not Marcus Aurelius all of a sudden. It's like you're not like writing some epic thing. It's like you're just literally like, I like what you said earlier about the valve. Like you're just opening the valve a wee bit and allowing some of those thoughts to spill out that maybe you're not even aware of.
Yeah. And it's that in itself is just that like expression of potential. Whatever comes onto the page is meant to be there. But I just brain dump, you know, but things come out and I'm like, that makes sense. You know, that makes sense. But it's great for that kind of developing the self-awareness. Why have I been stressed this week? Oh, maybe haven't got enough sleep. Kids were. It allows you to join the dots and then predict kind of the future based on the dots that you've just joined.
Yeah. Something I love, this is a wee Alcoholics Anonymous thing. HALT. HALT.
I've heard that, yeah.
Mate, I use that probably on a weekly basis.
Wow.
See if I'm feeling some kind of way. Like if I'm angry or if I'm stressed or like I'm feeling low or whatever, I'll just literally like, I'll do the HALT. So it's like, I'm hungry. No, I'm not hungry. I'm angry. Yeah, I'm like angry. Why am I angry? And then get to the root of that. Or no, I'm not angry. I'm a lonely.
Yeah.
Have I met with my core four, as I call them, my inner circle recently? Do I need to go for a walk with Steve or Nathan or whoever it is? And tired. And mate, there's been very few times in my life where it hasn't fallen into those 4 buckets.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
And they use that for, I'm feeling like relapsing today. I'll run through the HALT.
Yeah.
Can I solve one of these things? Because usually if you can solve one of those 4 things, the urge to use can dissipate. So it's interesting how it's not complicated stuff. Like it sounds on a surface level very like woo-woo. It's like, yeah, go into a forest and like take all your clothes off and put laser beams around you and do ayahuasca. You know what I mean? Yeah. But actually it's like, you know, they're very achievable.
Yeah.
Like it's something that someone could literally do. They could stop this podcast right now and just go and do it.
Yeah, it's simplicity.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the last couple of years I've taken CEOs out of their office and just walk in nature, you know, and just taking them out of a stressful environment, putting them into a softer environment of nature, and the conversations are different. And it's where they can piece together, you know, their life, you know, both professionally and personally. I think nature for me is the greatest school on earth. Like there's nothing in life that you can't figure out by watching nature. You know, the leaves falling, the, you know, fungus growing, animals burying, making nests for their family. It's all there. Nature has all the answers. You just need to go and observe.
Yeah. How a tree bends in the wind.
Yeah, it's incredible. Nature is just, we are part of nature. This is the thing. We are part of nature. We've just perversely kind of disconnected ourselves. And I think part of that disconnection from living in harmony with nature and natural laws is a prominent reason why the likes of anxiety, stress, depression, suicide is so high.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. There's an open loop in my head here that I just want to close before we move forward. It's actually back to Psalm 23. So the Lord is my shepherd. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He restores my soul. After you hit the reverse gear, Carrickfergus Harbour, you went home. You said you had a season where you lay down. Tell us about that. What happened to you then? And how did you even communicate to your family what had happened to you?
I never overtly told them I was that close. Mm-hmm. I just told them I was struggling.
Sure.
And that I needed to understand why I was struggling. I needed to. I think what I struggled with, Matthew, was there wasn't this big traumatic incident like, my parents hadn't died or my kids weren't sick. It was just a culmination of small things, and then it became the straw that broke the camel's back. I just explained that, and I suppose like COVID and all ended up, so I had time to rest and to reflect and to slow down. One of the things I done, which was quite unorthodox, but I went and done an ayahuasca retreat and went with this kind of curious mind of will this allow me to understand the workings of my mind? And it did. That was a pivotal moment. It was probably as prominent as my kids being born in terms of feeling that intense love again for myself, for life. And it really gave me the kickstarter then to think, okay, I don't want to rely on anything, but it reminded me that love's still there, that big heart's still there, life is still to be lived. I've just met an obstacle, I'm now over it or through it, and give me a real excitement for the path ahead. But that was most definitely a prominent aspect of that restorative phase.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the cycle of warriors. Warriors go to war, and then they come home, they take the armour off, and they lay low.
Yeah.
And they go back to being a farmer and they watch the potatoes grow. And then when the situation arises, it's time to put the armour back on, and then you go again. And that's the hero's journey.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. And what life would be awful if you didn't have the next dragon to slay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you do need that. I'm really curious. We met at one of your events, Rising Tide Network, where you get business people into the water. You get them to be vulnerable. You get them to open up. You get them to experience nature. And I had no idea, but of course it makes perfect sense now in 2020, hindsight, that the cold water was such a big part of your story.
Yeah.
And that's now part of the medicine that you feel called to distribute to as many people as possible.
It's such an important part. I feel as if part of my role in this life is to rewild people. I think when you look at the corporate world, for example, so the Rising Tide is bringing kind of corporate to nature. And for me, we're not as human beings designed to get up in the morning to spend 10 to 12 hours facing a screen, to come back home and face another screen, to eat unnatural food, and to do that day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. We're not designed as human beings to do that. We have so much more in us, and we become like these domesticated, robotic, empty people. And so I want to rewild corporate people. I want to introduce them to the sea, to nature. And if I can get them into the sea or into nature, into the forest, then nature takes over.
Right.
It allows them to drop their shoulders. It allows them to breathe. It allows them to remember, I'm human. I'm here for the human experience. And, it's about maintaining that space where people can be authentic, where they can be vulnerable, they can be supportive, they can be themselves. And it has been probably, out of everything I do, that's my favorite, to watch somebody approach the water with fear, to think, I'm not capable of this. This is too cold. I, as a human, I'm not built for this. I'm not strong enough. To see them kind of getting into the water, struggle, their breath escaping them, but then winning it back. To see kind of the supportive nature that we as humans are, thinking you can do this, come on. And then to watch the smiles after, that gives me so much joy. I absolutely love it. And I do believe that's part of my purpose, is just to get people back into nature to find themselves. But I don't need to put pressure on them to do that.
Yeah.
I just need to get them there, and then nature takes over.
I think it's one of the reasons why I've resonated with you so much, even just with the very brief interactions that we've had, is because you're offering people these like mini heroes journeys.
Yeah.
And it takes no longer than 10 minutes. And it's an identity shift. And you go through the full Lord of the Rings saga in those 10 minutes.
You really do.
You know, it's the fear of the unknown. No, I don't want to do it. I don't know. Okay, well, all these other people are going in with me. I've got a camaraderie there, and Ciaran's the guide, and he's guiding me through it. And like, I like how you don't make yourself the hero. I like what you said, where like you didn't say this, but this is what my brain processed it as. It's like nature's the real hero.
Absolutely, it really is.
And the people getting into the water are the hero.
Yeah.
And your job is literally just to be the signpost.
I just get exactly that, exactly that. But I talk about the hero's journey. One of the most fundamental aspects is them returning to the village.
Yeah.
And I speak about the ripple effect. So I kind of like to envisage that those people have been stressed. They've maybe gone through that identity crisis, or whatever it may be. But the ripple effect is them feeling that natural high, them feeling the benefit of authenticity, them feeling the benefit of being in nature, and going home to their families. For me, that's the most important part. That's the bit that I kind of sit back after it and mature and smile about. It's thinking there's now 25 homes that are getting a better version of the father, of the mother, of the wife, of the husband that left this morning.
Yeah.
And that makes me really happy.
I love your story for so many reasons that are obvious. I think one of the reasons, the less obvious reasons, is because like this is your job. Like you make money doing this.
It's crazy.
And like what a time to be alive that like you can have a business that does this. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's honestly like it's still surreal. Like it's still surreal. There's still multiple pinch me moments. Like there's still moments I almost have a fear of this is a dream and I'm afraid to wake up.
It's all going to be taken away from me. Yeah.
Because I am living my dream. I really am, and it's simplistic, but it's me, and it makes me really happy. It's now become a profitable business. It's now became an impactful business. Most importantly, it's now allowed me to live a life that I'm getting really close to my perfect day.
Right.
Swim in the sea in the morning, conversations like this in the afternoon, and being home and at the kitchen table with my wife and kids in the evening. That's it. That's it. I didn't have that for years.
Sure.
You're working crazy shifts. You've no control over your diary. So for me, like just that simplicity is so incredible. I love it.
I always think about the person who's listening, and the person who's listening who is in the 9 to 5 and they have that little niggle that they're like, could I do something like that? And so I always think about that person in particular, and I always like to ask a very simple question, which is, how do you actually make money? Like, what do people pay you for? What are your products and services? Like, because if you're on the outside, it's like sounds so mysterious. But if you could just like practically break it down for us, and also if you want to share what the future of your business could look like and how you think about that.
Yeah, great question. I mean, it's changed significantly. It has snowballed.
Oh, bro, when you start, it's like made 50 quid. I'll do anything.
Yeah, really. But that's it. It was.
My wife and I were actually just chatting. It's like we were like, talking through different stages of like my entrepreneurial journey. It's like the things I used to do for 50 quid are like criminal.
Yeah. Well, again, desperate.
Yeah.
I mean, now I can charge and do charge several £1,000s to go in and speak at a company.
Of course you do.
The same with working one-to-one with a CEO or a business owner in terms of self-awareness and that kind of coaching experience. At the start, I remember thinking, again with desperation, I'll do anything.
Yeah.
And I spoke for free. I asked to speak at charity events. It was just get the reps in. Just get the reps in. And as I started to appease myself that I can provide value here, once I was confident I can provide value, I started charging for that value.
Right.
And I remember I was charging like 150 quid for a talk, 350 quid, and a big company asked me to come up and speak 2 years ago, and I charged 500 quid and panicked about sending the invoice, panicked. And I did the talk.
You already have to draft, like, sorry, that was a typo. It meant to be 50 quid.
Yeah, but I remember panicking again, my working class mentality, thinking, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, not filtering in kind of the prep, kind of my life so far. But I came back like within half an hour. Yeah, no problem. See you then. And after the talk, I asked for feedback. And the girl was like, listen, very interactive, great. Slides were great. We were glad to see it was great turnout. My only criticism, Ciaran, is you were far too cheap. And I said, really?
Yeah. To charge the most you've ever charged and be called cheap
Yeah, I know.
is a massive mindset shift.
Oh, like that was a pivotal moment for me, because she said, this is the first time in this company that the soup and sandwiches have been more expensive than the speaker. Oh, and I asked her, I asked her outright, like, how much have I put in? And she says, well, my budget for you was $2,000.
Oh, Ciaran, class.
So I asked her outright. I was like, well, we've been back and forward through email. Why didn't you tell me? And she says, because this is going to be a great lesson for you. And it was, you know, thinking, okay, well, there's money out there and it's there to be made. And so long as I can provide value and keep getting the reps in and keep improving, then I'm going to go for it. And it's just been, for me, the entrepreneurial journey is probably the most, it's ultimate form of self-expression. You know, you have to get to know yourself, find yourself, and grow yourself there and then on the spot and continuously. And it has went massively in the right direction, but those early days was just a committal, keep showing up, consistency, keep showing for the ball. I was hosting workshops. I would have spoke at the opening of a packet of crisps. I was literally, you know, I was just saying yes to everything. And I'm not so convinced there's any other route. Mm-hmm. There's obviously the exception to every rule, but I think a lot of people want B, but they're not willing to go through the metamorphosis from A to B.
Of course, man.
And I probably took the hard route, but ultimately the only route, which was hard work.
Yeah.
Just constantly showing up every day.
Yeah, Hermosi's got a really interesting thing about confidence. He says all confidence is stacking up enough proof to yourself that you can do it. Yeah. And that's what you were doing.
Confidence loves evidence. You know, so I was able to show...
Move over, Alex Hermosi.
Sorry, Alex. Yeah. But it's so true. You have to prove to yourself before you can prove to others. And as I started to prove to myself, well, I am connecting with people in the room and they're telling me it's having a tangible impact in terms of how they are viewing the world. Well, then I have something of value to give to the world, and it's up to me. If in my head I can change somebody's perception of their potential, of their life, of their business, then it's up to me to put a price on that.
Sure.
And yeah, I've huge dreams and aspirations with it, and I am overachieving at the minute to me, you know?
Yeah.
But that's probably a wee bit of my doubt kicking in, going overachieving. We're all like, I always say to people, if I can do it, I know it sounds cliche, but like this guy from West Belfast that didn't go beyond GCSEs, has never been to university, has never had anyone in their family be self-employed, that's never, you know, never had a handout. If I can do it, quite literally anyone can. And it's down to discipline, which I think is the ultimate form of self-love, of just showing up every day consistently and trying to do something of service to the world.
Man, I'm so tempted just to end it right there because that was an absolute bar. But I have to know, you say you've got big dreams and aspirations.
Yeah.
Give us a bit.
I want to go global with the speaking. You know, for me, my vision at the minute is twofold. There's Ciaran May. I want to keep improving. You know, I've committed to being a student of life for the rest of my life. I want to stand on stage in America. I want to go to the Middle East. I want to increase my impact on a global stage. That's me. Natural resilience. I have created an online community. I, again, want to grow that exponentially. I want to show people that loneliness doesn't need to exist, that human connection is the strongest force in the universe, that it doesn't have to be complicated, that just help people find their tribe. And I want to take that, to a multi-million-pound company and provide what I believe the world needs, which is human connection, guidance around exploring your potential, and support in terms of expressing your potential.
Yeah. Online community, talk to me. Like, what's going on inside there? Like, I believe in what you're doing. So, like, the stage is yours. Like, pitch it, mate. Like,
well,
go for it.
It started off a year ago. Private Facebook group of just getting like-minded people together, recording webinars. Monthly meetups, getting people like forest walks, swimming, coffee shops, yoga. Goal setting, resilience, character building, and I met a guy called Matthew Thompson who did a talk, and I knew in my heart that the private Facebook group could only take it so far. It needed to go onto an online platform, but I didn't know how. And the thought of building my own app just seemed insurmountable. Too much money, too much energy.
Ludicrous,
yeah, and I knew people that were going through that process, and I didn't want that fight. One of your slides had school on the bottom of it, and it's something that I've been looking at, again, didn't know enough about, and I had a conversation with yourself and listening to your passion about school. There and then I made a choice to sign up, having no experience on it. So I've put the community onto school, and it's flourished in terms of the impact. Again, it's not about me. I never want it to be about me. People in the community, I say to them, I'll promote you. We'll record a webinar. Let's get your expertise. Allow the community to learn from each other, to grow with each other. And it's just facilitating that. It's just facilitating that. Now up to, about 120 local business owners with a view of 250 by the end of the year, with a view of 1,000 in 3 years. And then it gets really exciting where it can go global. Again, it's anywhere where there's people. It's stripping back everything that's unnecessary about the human journey and bringing it back to basics, human connection, inner exploration, expression of potential, safety, excitement, vulnerability, authenticity, all those wonderful things, putting it into a bucket and just allowing people to play with it. That's it.
Unreal. I think I fought the whole online thing for a long time in my own life.
I did, because for me, it's the opposite of like nature.
Yes.
It is the opposite of...
And it's the irony of me, like my whole business is podcasts. So there was a certain level of irony to that.
Yeah.
But I've come to realize that it's like, I think, 5 years ago when I deleted social media and all this sort of stuff, it was a bit too black and white, where it's like, Matthew, you're not actually accepting the reality of the world around you.
Yeah.
And like, this is here to stay. The internet, screens, we are in a way already living in a version of the metaverse, right? And it's like, someone actually, oh mate, this has just come back to me. Oh my goodness. Remember having a conversation with a guy called Colin from 16 South. He makes super successful, literally based around the corner. They make like kid shows for Disney. Amazing local success story. I think it was him. And he said it's like, it's that classic quote where it's like, you can either be like shouting from the sidelines or whispering from the inside. And I'm going to drop his reference here, because this might have been someone else. Someone said, it's like, you need to go into those dark places and you need to actually be a light inside those places. And I think the online world can be like an unbelievably dark place.
Yeah.
Like we talk about it all the time, like whether it's like addiction to video games or pornography or whatever. But if the good people just remove themselves from that, it's like then there's just a vacuum. And so I like in recent years, probably the last 3 years, I've realized it's like, no. It's like we actually need to like take territory in these places.
I totally agree.
And we need to actually, like, on my behalf, I need to exercise courage and I need to enter the cave that I'm afraid to enter.
Yeah.
and go in and be part of that world and put the discipline in place to make sure that I'm protected, my family's protected. But I have the utmost respect for you, and I think it's the future of where the internet is going, is online communities.
Yeah, you'd said earlier, about the warrior coming back and restoring and then going to war again. I feel as if that's what I'm doing in the online space.
Yeah, man.
I never owned a laptop growing up. I haven't had a laptop. I only got a laptop about 6 months ago. People find that hard to believe.
Unbelievable.
Probably, borderline computer illiterate.
Yeah.
Never needed one. I was that age where we couldn't afford a PC, then built-in sites, then the police. I didn't need a laptop. And so there was fear. There was most definitely fear for me in terms of not having the tech know-how. But for me, this message that I'm so passionate about needs to be accessible. People need to get a notification to say there's a meetup, we're going for a hike up the Mourns, there's going to be coffee, we're going to get together, we're going to experience community, because you can hack the online world to really have a beneficial and positive impact on humanity.
Yeah.
And so I was given by a great guy, given a MacBook about 6 months ago. He's go and teach yourself how to use this and make technology your friend.
Wow.
And so that's what I'm doing. I'm currently in the cave of my tech fear. I'm getting over it and I'm using it to my advantage. And I think everything can be used for greater good. Everything. Technology is here to stay. In fact, with AI, it's here to grow. We're starting on a threshold of a ever-changing world. And I think the good people need to stand up and say, okay, this is reality.
Yeah.
Per se. Let's ensure that when, I did a talk recently, emotional intelligence is more important than artificial intelligence. Like let's use technology for humanity. Let's use it to connect people. Let's use it to get people into nature. Let's use it to promote small business owners as opposed to the big corporates. Let's use it for good. And it most definitely can be done for that. It is done for that. It's easy to become too critical with things.
Yeah, I agree.
It is being done for good.
Yeah. Awesome. Ciaran, I've loved it. It's been class.
Thank you.
Genuinely. There'll be a link in the description of wherever you're listening or watching this to Ciaran's community. Like, I absolutely love what you're doing, mate. And it is a honor to tell people about it because I just think it's class. Mr. Daniel, in the new virus shirt, you want to close us out?
Yeah. So once again, thank you so much for everything you're saying. Like, it was truly inspiring words. And to end this off, for my final question, if you could go back in a time machine to you whenever you've just left school and you're in the construction site.
Oh, this guy's getting good. Oh, I told you leveled up.
If you can go back to yourself then, what would you say?
Just keep going. Just keep going and it will be okay. As superficial as that may sound, that period of a lot of men's lives is the hero's journey in itself. And I felt as if I didn't have a hero to look up to. Sometimes you just need to keep going. Just keep going. It's such a powerful phrase, from Glen Waterfall to that period. If I hadn't just kept going, I wouldn't be here. So just keep going, and it always ends up okay. It always ends up perfect. It really does always end up perfect. So keep going.
That's a legend. No, that is a good way to end.
Exactly.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate you, Ciaran. Bless you, mate.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.